All right. Good morning. Good morning. ESPN 1059 The Zone. The SEC Insider Hit on the Out of Bounds Show is brought to you by Mississippi Ag. All of their locations are open, all 16 locations. You can visit agup.com to find the retail location nearest you. The one nearest us right now is in Canton, about 10 minutes from here on the west side of I-55. And then the one in Pearl is about 15 minutes from us. Agup.com, all 16 locations are open, and they're having their Drive Green sales event Thursday, May 21st through Saturday, May 23rd. $1,000 off. 1 through 5 series tractors. Agup.com. Agup.com, Mississippi Ag. We want to welcome in Mike Detillier, WWL Radio TV New Orleans. He joins us on the Miller Lite guest line. We've been talking coaches this morning and having some fun with we're going to play football. We're super confident we're going to play football, SEC and the NFL, among other conferences. And some things are looking really, really good around the country. And Mike, we had Steve Spurrier Jr. on last week, which was a ton of fun. And he's, sounded just like his dad. Great personality. He's now on the Mississippi State staff with Mike Leach. And I thought about this morning as knowing that we were going to have you on. Right around 2000, late 2004, early 2005, Mike, can you imagine if it would have lined up? Because I heard it was really close, that Steve Spurrier could have taken the LSU job. And kind of what that would have looked like, considering the athletes that LSU gets. Do you remember that? And how close was that, Mike?
There was some talk of it. Exactly how close it came, I'm really not sure, because everybody's got a little bit different story today. So that tells me there was some money issues most likely involved. When it starts to get muddy like that, then there's a finance part about it. But Steve would have been great here with the athletes that they have. LSU's considered DBU because of all the defensive backs that gets produced out of Louisiana, but it's really become wide receiver U. To a certain extent, they got more wide receivers that come out of Louisiana than they do defensive backs. Archie Manning and I were talking about this last year, that I haven't counted for this year, but last year in a 4-year recruiting cycle, they had 45 Division I wide receivers signed out of the state of Louisiana.
Good grief.
So can you imagine with that fun and gun, and he got all them athletes rolling around. It's just remarkable. It really has. It's dried up quarterback-wise because, growing up as a kid, there was Burt Jones and Joe Ferguson and Doug Williams and Norris Weiss, and you could kind of go on, and Terry Bradshaw. You could kind of go on here in Louisiana, and that's dried up. And I can't explain why, but it has. But the wide receivers are just remarkable. And then this year, probably out of the top dozen players in the state of Louisiana, I bet 5 of them were wideouts. So can you imagine Spurrier getting his hand? Now, listen, Florida got a lot of athletes, too. I mean, listen, you can't deny that. But, yeah, I think it would have been a great fit for him here. His personality would have fit extremely well. And he would have been certainly welcomed with open arms because of the way he sort of talks and walks. And in a lot of ways, like a lot of people I know here, in Louisiana, they think they can do it better than anybody else. and so, and sometimes that gets you in trouble and sometimes it doesn't. Yeah, I talked to Ed about this, when he was at Ole Miss, that, hey, listen, we grew up in a kind of environment that, if somebody can't do it, I'm going to do it myself, we'll get out of the way. But that's not being a head coach. You can't be a micromanager. You got to be able to, give responsibilities to others and trust them. And he didn't do any of that at Ole Miss. He has here, and but he had never been a head coach before. But man, thinking about what Spurrier could have done in this environment with all those receivers,
dominate.
It would have been unbelievable in that spot, and a little bit of arrogance about it.
Sure.
And it's not. Listen, it ain't bragging if you can do it. It's not bragging if you can do it. And he could have certainly done it. But there's varying amounts of degrees on how close all that came. And everybody's story's different. So, what do you believe at that point?
Well,
because
Mike,
somebody tells you one thing and somebody tells you something else. It's almost like the Jimbo Fisher story of a few years back when it looked to be Les was out the door.
Right.
And had Jimbo given them the 2 thumbs up and assured them he was coming here, they would have pulled the trigger. The problem was Jimbo was like a dog in wet grass. He couldn't give them a firm decision. And that opened the door for a lot of people with some influence to come in and say no. And it was really the wrong decision because him and Oliva didn't get along. And all it did was prolong what you knew was going to happen, that eventually they were going to pull the plug on him. And it did during the season. It did open the door for Ed to become the head coach. But really, they did him a disservice, to be honest with you, and keeping him here. And, 4 or 5 games into the year, they unplugged him. So, but again, that story, has been sort of kicked around quite a bit also.
When Les Miles was hired, we're visiting with Mike Detillier on the Out of Bounds show. When Les Miles was hired, it was Skip Burtman, right? This was pre-Oliva back in 04-05, right?
Yep.
Burtman is the AD?
Yep.
Okay. So Skip hired Les Miles.
Skip hired him, yeah. And Skip had always told me Nick was the greatest coach he's ever been around. And listen, this is all before he goes to Alabama and does all this. Skip was very open to me about, Mike, I'm just telling you, he's the greatest coach I have ever been around at any level, from a standpoint of if it's football, basketball, baseball, you name it, he's the best. And I was stunned because, the one thing with Skip, he's pretty open about certain things, but that was quite a statement for him to make about Nick at that time, because he was struggling toward the end at Miami. And we did a function together, and he's like, don't worry about Nick. He'll bounce back on his feet real quick. And so, yeah, he was here when they hired Les. And at that time, there were a lot of different people trying to jump in late into it. But Les had tremendous success at Oklahoma State.
Sure.
People sort of forget that part of it, but he really did. He had a lot of success and had success here at LSU.
Sure.
It just got, like anything else, it gets stale after a while, and he just refused to change.
Well, Orgeron reinvented himself. I mean, this is, you've known him forever, and you're super close to it. Me from afar, obviously I didn't buy in to Orgeron, reinventing himself. It's one of the most remarkable stories in the history of college football. Coaches don't reinvent themselves. I mean, 1 out of every 5,000 do in whatever sport. But he
got another chance.
Sure.
See, the thing is, a lot of times coaches reinvent themselves, but they don't get another chance to become a head coach.
Sure.
And I think that was the thing. Here's the craziest thing, because I did an interview yesterday. This is December of 2018. And I call him up, and we talking, and he just rambles. I mean, real quickly on the phone about everything. Oh, yeah. If you get a word in, brother, you're lucky. He rambles. And so he tell me, hey, T-Boy, listen, I'm going to tell you right now, we're going to become a national recruit team. I said, what? He said, we're going to become a national recruit team. I said, well, what are you talking about? He said, man, we got all kind of talent, man. They're getting in touch with us on the East Coast, Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia. He says places in Georgia, one-stop shopping. And I'm like, okay, because LSU had been known to heavily recruit Louisiana and a little bit east, a little bit
South
west.
Florida, a little
sort
bit.
of follow the I-10 corridor.
Right.
Go into Houston and Dallas, go into Alabama, into the panhandle of Florida, a little bit in Mississippi, but they didn't have a lot of success there. And so now he's telling me, yeah, well, we're going to California, we're going to Arizona. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? And I told him, I said, man, East Coast, they've never done this, never. And he was like, well, if we didn't know we'd have lived this long, we'd have took much better care of our bodies too, right? I was like, yeah, I guess. And sure enough, that changed. And you look at LSU's recruiting today, I think they've got 11 or 12 commitments, one from the state of Louisiana. Everything is east, west. They're involved with all kind of linemen in the Midwest and out in the Northeast, out west. And it's unbelievable how he thought this through. And this is 2018. So they're preparing to play UCF in the Citrus Bowl. And I'm like, that's what's on your mind today? And he was like, yeah, well, I'm just telling you ahead of time before, anybody else figures it out. I was like, okay. And that was the first time for me to see that he had really started to move the chess pieces across the board at LSU differently. And, he knew what he had in Burrow, because that was Burrow's first season. And he knew he had to change offenses, and he had told me we're going to go to the spread offense. And he said the other thing we're going to be is a national recruit team. And, I'm stunned because, and I get it to a certain extent, but they had never done it. They had never been like that before, and that was a vision of his. They went to show me a lot about how much he had changed and how dramatic it was that he would switch that quickly from being a heavy I-10 corridor team and recruiting to now going all over the country. And it's certainly worked for him.
Yeah. I'm not sure that anyone has reinvented themselves. Like you said, he got a great chance at a blue blood program where you can get elite talent, but he made it all line up and wins. And he's got the culture piece going. I mean, he's just.
Oh, yeah. And who predicted this was Dabo. Dabo Sweeney did. Deshaun Watson wins the Manning Award, and he's down here and get a chance to visit with him for a few minutes backstage, and he was like, hey, listen, your boy's going to be just fine. I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, no, I'm talking about Ed. He said, he's going to be fine. He said, you know why? He said, look at me. He said, he said, in many ways, I was Ed all over. He said, I was an assistant coach. I'd never been a head coach. I'd never been a coordinator anywhere. And I become a head coach. And it doesn't work out, in my first full year. They want to run me off at Clemson. We were a 500 football team. But he said, my athletic director stood up for me and said, you know what? I got my faith in you, and don't let me down. And he said, we turned it around real quickly. He said, I'm just telling you, Ed's going to be the exact same way here at LSU. And listen, that was going into the draft when Deshaun got picked. He won the Manning Award. And Dabo sort of sensed it, that, listen, surround yourself with good assistant coaches, build that program, get the best from your area, and then tentacle, north, south, east, west. Wherever you got to go get it. And that's what he's done.
Sure.
And Ed's taken almost like a blueprint. And Dabo said, I've never been a head coach before, so I didn't know how to act being a head coach.
Look, Dabo, Mike, he lost to South Carolina 5 times in a row, which doesn't happen in that rivalry. and was able to. Well, this is where we started the interview. Spurrier hammered him early as Dabo was trying to get the whole thing up and running, and you're right. It is remarkable, and this blueprint is interesting. Dabo doing it now, Orgeron doing it.
It's remarkable. If I would close my eyes, the accents are different, but it's almost like I'm hearing the same dude.
Right.
There is the similarities there in a lot of particular cases. Dabo's a little bit more glib to talk than Ed is.
Animated.
Ed's become better at it.
Yeah.
Ed's become much better at it, and Ed's a great storyteller. Yeah, because if you with him sort of one-on-one or two or three people, man, he got some. That's unbelievable. And Bobby always tells me, Mike, you like a genius version of Forrest Gump. You connected to every damn body. But Ed is too. Ed is connected, around the clock, so to speak, to everybody. And all those stories about The Rock when he coached him at Miami and all that sort of stuff, and and coaching for Jimmy Johnson and then Pete out in California at Southern Cal. And Sean Payton stuff, he got a zillion stories, one after the other. But it's remarkable that it goes to show, and he's always said this, that I wouldn't want another young coach to go through what I went through because I was hard-headed.
Right.
But he said, it does give a little bit of motivation for that coach who maybe doesn't make it right off the bat, that he could possibly get another chance to redo his career. And he's always been apologetic that, man, I wish things would have worked at Ole Miss. I really did. I wasn't ready. I wasn't, really sure about how to do certain things.
Well, it was more on Ole Miss than Ed. I mean, let's just be honest. It was a bad hire in that the administrators at Ole Miss should have known, I know there was a lot going on then, and he was part of the hottest program in the country, and he was the recruiting coordinator there, and so on. But I think even Ed obviously admits it just wasn't a good hire for. And
he thought Dennis Erickson would get it.
Right.
He really thought that because I spoke to him, I think the day before he got his interview, and he told me, Erickson walks in that room. He said, "Look at that resume. He can slam down." Like you said, that I can't compete with that. But Ed's great one-on-one. That's the thing that I think a lot of people don't get. You put him in a room one-on-one or with a couple different people, he's really, really good. And people always ask me about the national championship game, and I said, it was great to see him win, knowing a guy for basically almost all your life. And how many people, from the press standpoint, can say, I'm covering college football, and a guy I've known virtually all my life is going to end up being the national championship coach. There aren't a lot of people walking like that. And, Bobby and I talk about it often. But here's the other crazy thing. I'm in the upper level, and in the coaches suite for LSU, the two guys who are hollering the most and cheering the most are the two biggest backers of the University of Southern California.
Really?
The two biggest donors at the University of Southern Cal were in the coach's booth cheering on LSU and Coach O.
That's cool.
Listen, that is about as crazy a deal as I've seen. And, and Ed had told me they were going to be there. And sure enough, the two biggest donors for University of Southern Cal were in that box cheering for him.
All right, we'll leave it there. We'll do this again. Not next week, but the next, because we're going to be out of here Monday and Tuesday. But Mike is always great. LSU NFL Insider on the Miller Lite guest line. Follow Mike on Twitter at Mike Detillier, WWL Radio TV New Orleans. Thanks, Mike. Have a great Memorial Day weekend. We appreciate it, buddy.
Thank you, Bo. Appreciate it, bud.
Man, he's the best. Little Steve Spurrier, little Skip Burtman goes with Les Miles. Blake, I've always wondered how close that was. Man, you drop Steve Spurrier at LSU that recruits itself. About 80% of that just recruits itself.
Yeah.
And the ridiculous athletes that they have all over that state, not just South Louisiana, North Louisiana too. And you put that offense at LSU, Urban Meyer may not win. I mean, I think he would have won one, but he may not have.
Ooh.
He may not have gotten both of them because one, they play each other every year. Two, they may have tied up a little bit more in Atlanta, and Spurrier goes with South Carolina. And when you can win 11 games 3 straight years, you're unbelievable.
How about the fact that Steve Spurrier has almost coached at like every school in the SEC? That was my first thought when you asked him that. I was like, wait, he almost coached at Mississippi State in the 90s. Then he almost coached LSU in the 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's incredible. I've always thought, how hard did LSU try to keep Saban? Because that's always been my thought. I never knew that Spurrier story, so you learn something new every day. Even as tied into sports as I am, I had never heard that about Spurrier going to LSU.
Well,
I would have been in elementary school then.
Sure.
Or early junior high.
Well, I just remember when it all went down, I thought, man, if you drop that guy in Baton Rouge.
Well, imagine the fun and gun at LSU the last 20 years.
Well, imagine the roster Saban left him. You
Yeah.
thought Miles won big, and he did. Think about Spurrier.
That's what I'm saying. The LSU would have been running the Joe Burrow-style offense the last 20 years, basically. Think about what that would have done to the SEC. If LSU was running that high-powered an offense for the last 20 seasons, that'd be remarkable. But to me, I always wondered, how hard did LSU try to keep Nick Saban? Like, could they have done more to keep Saban? Because if Saban doesn't leave LSU,
I think Saban had his mind made up that he was going to give the NFL, or I think Saban thought he was an NFL guy, and then he learned he had to figure out.
Is that because of his tie to Belichick?
Well, yeah, and the Browns, and,
Yeah.
and the Oilers, yeah. Houston Oilers.
Do you think Belichick's success spurred him into wanting to be in the NFL and be successful?
Yes,
Because they were right at the same spot, and then Belichick took off in the NFL, and Saban went to the college ranks.
no question.
And so
And some other coaches that he got to see along the way.
and you know, in the back of his mind, Saban's going, I'm better than half these guys coaching in the NFL.
Sure.
And if he gets Drew Brees, the world may never know.
That's right. If he gets Breeze, could be a different deal. The Out of Bounds Show, driven by Mississippi Ag. Visit agup.com. All 16 locations are open with Mississippi Ag. The Mississippi Ag text line is 601-885-ESPN, 885-3776. Welcome in. Good morning. The show is powered by Superior Foundation for all your foundation repairs, superior.ms. Also, Mudbugs will be slinging crawfish tomorrow, Wednesday through Sunday now. Mudbugs slinging the best crawfish in Mississippi, 2 locations in Rankin County. Live in the Bank Plus studio. Grab your clubs and irons and golf balls at Edwin Watts Golf Shop before you go to Live Oaks Golf Club. Blake, did you tell me the Roosevelt is open?
That's right. Lunch is there.
Lunch at the Roosevelt in the Live Oaks Golf Club clubhouse. And then play 9 or 18 and say hey to Kyle while you're there.